Some programming tasks are, let's face it, pretty boring. Think, for example, of command line argument handling or parsing configuration files and such. So the question is, can ChatGPT actually help us do that and take away the boilerplate code writing that we're unfortunately so used to? So let's try and find out. I have here a fragment of documentation of an application, and what I would like ChatGPT to do is to generate a function that deals with these command line arguments for this application. So when I submit this query, of course ChatGPT is not going to do anything yet, but I'm going to ask it to generate code next. Meanwhile, it gives me some suggestions on how to improve the documentation, so that's already nice. It tells me, for instance, that there are no examples. Indeed, I would agree. But now let's ask our actual query. And indeed, as you can see, the answer is a function that creates a parser. It even has documentation. So it creates a parser and then adds the required argument one by one. And as you can see, ChatGPT correctly inferred the type of each command line argument so that it will be converted automatically by the argparse library. And essentially this is a skeleton application, so basically I could run this and test whether it is correct or not. That saved a lot of tedious typing, but of course this was sort of easy because this is Python, and of course there's quite a lot of Python code out there on the internet and has been part of the training set for ChatGPT. So we should also try whether it can do the same thing for different programming languages. Let's for instance consider C++ and see whether it can use the Boost library in order to get a similar function for a C++ application. When we submit this query, you see that indeed we get code. The Boost library is included. Program options.hpp, that's perfect. It defines a namespace, which is indeed good practice. It also defines a struct that can hold our values. Again, note that both the type of the command line arguments as well as the default values have been captured correctly. Then it continues to create a function parse arguments that takes indeed the number of command line arguments and the array containing them. It creates options. It adds the different options as it's supposed to do in Boost, so that's quite good. It immediately populates the struct it created. Excellent. It does the necessary Boost program options hacking in order to get everything to work, to deal with the help argument, which by the way I didn't ask it to do, but it does, so that's great. And it handles exceptions if any, and returns the options as required. And then again we get a skeleton application that would allow me to verify whether this works or not. So this is HPC, and of course we want to know what ChatGPT can do with respect to Fortran as a programming language. So the query is quite simple, and we get an implementation. It's a complete program apparently. It correctly uses implicit none, so that's very good. And then it defines a user-defined type with various fields for each of the options. It also inferred the type correctly. I'm not entirely happy with the real. I would prefer a kind parameter there, but okay. It also takes into account the default values, so that's very good. Then it declares a variable of that user-defined type, and it calls a subroutine which it actually defined. And there is another subroutine to print the options, so that basically likely we'll get some feedback on what we entered. So let's have a look at that subroutine pass arguments. So it takes options as an argument itself, as a parameter, and that is an out parameter. Intent is out, so basically that will be the output of our subroutine. Okay, a couple of local variables. Then something fairly weird happens, which personally I wouldn't do that way. So this is an application I definitely want to test, because my impression is that that uses some non-standard functionality of the get command argument function, or subroutine in this case. But okay, let's go with it and see what it further does. So it tries to infer the number of arguments, and then it iterates over the arguments. Okay, each time it gets the appropriate command line argument, indicated by the counter I, and then there is a select case, and it iterates essentially, it tries to iterate over all the input values, and then we get something interesting. Basically, we get case etc. So that is kind of an interesting approach here. So it's not quite clear why it did that. No, here should be the complete code. So it is quite similar, but now it seems to be complete. We don't get help for this application. Okay, and it checks for required arguments, so that is interesting. And then finally it is there is indeed the print options function to visualize whatever we entered. Okay, I'd really have to try this application, because again I'm not convinced about the application of this particular function here. These guys seem a little bit suspicious. But okay, apart from that, it's definitely a good starting point. So there are some things I like, some things I'm a bit skeptic about, but it seems overall to be a quite reasonable approach. So indeed, after verifying, it turns out that the second call to get command arguments, so with the argument -1, indeed doesn't work, and that should be replaced by a function called to command argument count, and that would be assigned to numargs, and the rest of the code should work. The first call with get command argument 0 can be eliminated, since actually that doesn't do anything, so that just doesn't make any sense. Of course, I had to go and check. I could also ask ChatGPT what it actually thinks about that particular code fragment. So when we ask ChatGPT to verify its result, then let's see what it comes up with. Of course, I'm absolutely correct as usual. So basically it does not accept -1, indeed. We already know the total number of command line arguments. Okay, command argument count, nice. So let's see the improved version. And indeed it has additionally, I hope, yes, indeed it has additionally also eliminated the superfluous call to get command argument with the value 0. So this should work much better. We can continue and try to get some help here. And again, it updated the code with a -help option. So it did not modify the user-defined type, which is fine because I don't need it in there. So that's no problem. So let's see whether and how it dealt with the help. Aha, it has another subroutine print help. So that's actually nice. And let's see what it came up with, or is still coming up with. We're late afternoon, so the United States are very busy right now. And here's the help message being produced. And that certainly looks quite reasonable in my opinion. And again, the print options function, or subroutine rather, that we already knew. And then some additional stuff. Okay, so quite nice. With some work, we actually got ChatGPT to generate relatively decent Fortran code to deal with command line arguments. This took a bit more effort, not because Fortran is a difficult programming language, but simply because there's much less Fortran code out there, and basically that explains why ChatGPT needs a little more effort in order to come up with the result we're happy with.